So what an amazing weekend. And I'm excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And, we've seen so many beautiful faces and heard from so many people this weekend so far. And we have been talking about the animals. And I am really excited to be here speaking on behalf of the animals. I know we all speak for the animals in our own ways. I am actually an animal communicator and a coach. And so I have telepathic conversations with animals. I don't know exactly how it works. It's sort of mind to mind. And I like to think of it as being heart to heart and soul to soul, because animals are so loving and wise and soulful. And I speak with animals that live with humans. I speak with wild animals. I speak with animals in captivity. I speak with animals who passed over, and they just have so much to share, right? Those of us who advocate for animals know what amazing sentient beings they are. And so I work in collaboration with animals in everything that I do. So I also coach people on animal loss and on transformation, and I do it in conjunction with animals. So everything I do, I'm partnering with animals, and I would really encourage all of you in whatever animal activism you do to realize the animals are in it with you and to invite them with you energetically on your path, to reach out to them for inspiration, for ideas, because they are in it with us 100%. They want to be our partners. They want to help us. They want to support us. And just to, give you a sense of some of the things that I've done collaborating with animals is I write a Healing with Animals newsletter that I write with the animals. I write a blog with them. At one point, I wrote a newspaper column called Jill's Healing Wave, but it was really Jill and the Animals Healing Wave. It's just a long title. I've also collaborated with the animals and nature with a whole group of communicators, and we shared recommendations with the United Nations for reaching the Sustainability Development Goal. I also organized and founded an event in 2017 called Animal Rock, which is a celebration of our relationship with animals. And the animals inspired that, and they continue to organize it and orchestrate it. And another thing I do with the animals is facilitate a support group for animal activists. And, it's so interesting because I think all of us here listening, we talk about animals as being sentient beings, and we talk about their emotional life and their feelings. And it's so interesting because at the same time, we can forget that we as human beings are emotional beings with feelings. And sometimes we forget about that. And this work that we're doing, this commitment we've made to changing the planet, to changing the way that we treat and relate to animals, can bring up a lot of emotions, right? So it's really important for the animals' sake as well as for our own, for us to be taking care of ourselves. And the animals really want us to do that. They want us to be healthy healers, because the healthier we are, the more that we can help them and heal the planet. So what I'd like to do is, it's been a long weekend. A lot of emotions may have come up, right? Because we're being brave souls here by opening up to the truth of how animals are treated in our planet. And a lot of feelings come up around that. So I'm just going to invite everyone just for a couple of minutes to just center yourself, put your feet on the ground, feel your connection to the earth beneath your feet. And just breathe in love. Breathe in the energy of love for a couple of seconds. And then breathe out any anger that you may be carrying inside of you. And now breathe in compassion. Feel compassion for yourself and for others moving throughout your body. And breathe out any fear that you may be carrying. And breathe in a sense of peace and tranquility. And breathe out any sadness that you may be feeling. Just let it go for right now. And so you may be wondering, what do the animals think about all this? And, animals, just like people, each individual has their own thoughts, their own perspective, their own feelings. But overwhelmingly, what they share with me in terms of the things that humans do to them, the way that we mistreat them, they certainly would like us to change our ways, and they do not want to be mistreated by any means. And at the same time, overwhelmingly, what they express is a sense of brokenheartedness about how human beings have left our hearts. And we have turned our backs on the most beautiful part of ourselves, our heart centers. And so they really feel a sadness for us, for their own sake, as well as our sakes and the planet. And so they want to partner with us in finding our way back to our hearts. So what I'd like to share with you today is I wanted to share a little bit about my story and then some ideas about new perspectives, ways to look at life, ourselves, our advocacy that can really help us in taking good care of ourselves and really become more effective advocators and animal activists. And then how do we really put it into practice? So, in terms of my own story, I came out of the womb absolutely adoring animals. I think I felt more connected to animals than I did than people. And over the years, I have to tell you that I really struggled with living vegetarian and vegan. My heart was always in it. And what would happen was I would reach a certain point where I would start to feel deprived. And I knew over time that it was likely not physiological or not physical, that it was emotional. And yet I didn't know what to do about it. And so time and time again, I would find myself in some way turning my back on the animals and really turning my back on my most authentic self, which is, I think, what a lot of human beings do. And it wasn't until I healed these very deep emotional wounds inside of myself that finally I was able to fully be my authentic self and live the vegan lifestyle that is most true to who I am. And so I share that with you because I think it's important to realize that for ourselves and taking care of ourselves, as well as reaching other people who may be meat eaters, that we have a human species that is really emotionally vulnerable and very compromised psychologically in a lot of ways. And so for a lot of people, they have left their heart center for a host of reasons, a lot of which may be unconsciously about self-protection. And so it can be a tricky kind of thing reaching people. And sometimes we don't understand if people are seeing the photos and they're seeing the images and they say that they love animals, how can they not be vegan? And so my point here is that humans and the human mind can be complicated, right? We have the capacity to compartmentalize and to rationalize. And when we're in a place of self-preservation or self-protection, we can do all of these things that one could never imagine we could do. So just as a sort of starting point of sort of setting the stage for compassion for ourselves and for others. So there's a saying that I love. It's life is not measured by the breaths we take, but by the moments that take our breath away. And so the more that we can find and appreciate those moments and create them in our lives, the more energy we put out into the universe that's loving and kind. And at its most basic level, everything is energy. So the more loving energy we put out into the world, the more we're creating. And one of the questions that I like to ask myself in giving moments when things feel like they're on track, and even in those moments, perhaps especially when life feels especially challenging, is what would love do, right? Love for myself, love for the animals, love for the other people. And that can be a really powerful question. I believe that love is the most powerful emotion that there is. And, you know, when you think of what can be done from a place of love, right? How a mother can lift a car to save her child. Love is so incredibly powerful. And I think while there are a whole host of emotions that come up for us in relation to advocating for animals, love, I think, is the single emotion that can be most powerful in reaching people and creating a world where all animals are treated with love, respect, and compassion. And, you know, when we are our most authentic selves, we're really stepping the plate up to the plate and we're owning our personal power. And that is so powerful. I mean, you can see it in someone, right? When they're owning their personal power and they're feeling alive and good about themselves, right? Like we've seen some of the speakers and some of the people who shared that are in that space. And you know what? When other people see you in that space, they want to know, like, what are you eating? Like, what are you taking? Like, what's your secret, right? And part of that, for those of us who are making the choice to live a vegan lifestyle, is that we are honoring the truth of our hearts. And we are choosing every day in all of the choices we make to honor and to choose love. There's a quote that I love by Wayne Dyer. And Wayne said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at begin to change. And, you know, with this and some of the other ideas that I'm going to share today, I'm not asking you to take my word for it. I'm inviting you to try it on. Take it for a ride and see how it works. Because again, everything is energy, right? When we start looking at things in a new way, things start to change, things start to shift. It's part of the way that the universe works. So play with it, have fun with it. And, you know, to remember that if nothing ever changed, there would be no butterflies, right? So it's interesting because as much as we say we want to create a new world, the human condition is one we tend to avoid change, right? So we say we want the world to change, And then even in our everyday lives, we can be resisting change in different ways, right? So in some ways, we may be sending mixed messages to the universe, right? So just to be aware of that and check in with ourselves. And to remember that we're always planting seeds, right? So when a plant is growing under the ground, right, there's a period of time where it may look like nothing's happening, right? We've planted the seedlings and we're patiently or sometimes impatiently waiting, and we don't see anything happening. And the reality is there's plenty going on, right? It's just under the surface, and we maybe cannot actually see it yet. So to realize and to remind ourselves that there are plenty of things changing, plenty of things going on. We may just not be able to witness it with our eyes. And one of my favorite stories about change is because I remind myself about this, about how things really do change. My very first animal rights protest was in front of Madison Square Gardens, protesting the circus animals at Ringling Brothers. And I was dressed up in an elephant costume. And years later, actually just recently in the last couple of years, I was present in the New York City Council chambers when the council voted to ban wild animals in circuses in New York City. And so it was such a story of full circle and how things really can change. And again, you know, for many years, I didn't see that change happening. And then it can feel like seemingly out of nowhere, except it's not out of nowhere, right? Because I had spent many years advocating for animal-friendly laws, that this was a moment where I got to witness it and be a part of it, and to really let my tears roll because it was such a joyous moment. Another quality that can help us in taking care of ourselves and also in advocating for animals is non-attachment. And I'm not suggesting that in any way we don't want things to change for the animals, but when we're too attached, sometimes we can hold on to ways of looking at things, ways of being that can be counterproductive. And there's a Sufi story that I love, and I'm gonna tell it in my own way. And the gist of the story is that there, were two people that were on their way to cross over to this beautiful island with wonderful fruit and vegetables. And it was just this paradise island. And so, but in order to get to the island, they had to swim over there. And so one of the, people turned to their friend and said, hey, we need to swim to the island to get there. And the other person responded by saying, okay, but, I have to take my food with me. I have to take this bag with me. And the first person said, but you can't carry it with you to get to this island, this amazing island paradise with this amazing healthy food. You can't take that bag of food with you. And they went back and forth several times, right? And the second person ultimately said, if I cannot take my bag of food, then I cannot go. And how sad, right? Because in how many different ways do we hold on to an old bag of food metaphorically, when there's this beautiful island paradise out there with an abundance of fruits and vegetables and, right? So just to be checking in with ourselves, that whatever we may be carrying, that may be getting in the way of us moving forward. that we can gently release it. And, in terms of this process of caring for ourselves, moving forward and advocating for animals, boundaries can be very important. I talked about how important love was and is. And sometimes people think that if you're setting boundaries, that's counter to love. And that is not true at all. Sometimes love says no. Right? What's important, though, is energetically the place that this boundary is coming from inside of you, right? So it can be, no, I cannot help you with that tonight. It can be, no, you cannot harm this bear. It can be, no, I need to put myself first in this moment, right? It can look many different ways. A loving no can be very powerful. And the truth is that we tend to feel resentful when we don't set boundaries for ourselves. That's when those feelings come up. But when we're setting a healthy, safe boundary for ourselves and for those we care about, then that's empowering, right? There's no reason to feel resentful because we're taking good care. And, sometimes people talk about hope. And, when you're on a journey like we are in terms of really trying to shift things in the world, hope on some level keeps us going. And at the same time, I like to think of intention. And, because hope can be sort of in some way, we're hoping it's going to happen, right? But we're not sort of stepping up to the plate and claiming it the way we are with intention, right? When we set an intention, we're setting a goal beyond a goal, right? That we're putting it out to the universe, that this is a reality. We are engaged in creating this reality. We are stepping into the future where it's a reality, where all animals are treated with love, respect, and compassion, right? We're claiming that that's the intention, and so it is, right? And along with the intention is really holding faith that this will be. And just by virtue of holding that intention and that faith, we are starting to shift things on our planet. Another thing that really can help us in this process is mindfulness. And there's a definition that I love of mindfulness because, mindfulness is one of those phrases that gets talked a lot about today. And what mindfulness is awareness that arises through paying attention intentionally and not judgmentally in the present moment. So the more that we can practice that, and we can do that in everything that we do. We can do it at a protest. We can do it when we're writing a letter to the editor, right? We can do it when we're working with a foster animal, right? In any given moment, we can choose to approach whatever comes across our path with mindfulness. And along with mindfulness is meditation. And, I'm pretty broad in what I think meditation can be. There are so many forms of meditation. I think of it as really connecting to your inner truth, your center. And the Dalai Lama said that if every 8-year-old in the world is taught meditation, we will eliminate violence from the world in 1 generation. So think of how powerful meditation can be, right? If you're meditating on the world that we want to create, that we can create together, And remember that the animals are with us on this journey. They are partnering with us in creating this new, beautiful world. And, along with all of the other emotions we talked about is grief, right? And it's really important that we make space for the sadness, the grief, the overwhelm that we may feel in certain moments. Because again, we are, if we walk into a supermarket and we see what's labeled as steak, we know there's nothing called a steak. There was a beautiful sentient cow, right? And we know that, right? Whereas, so many other people that are walking in and out of the supermarket don't see that. Somewhere inside of them, they know that, but they're not at a place yet, perhaps, where they can acknowledge that to themselves, right? So with that, right, can come a lot of grief. And it's really important that we acknowledge it and find healthy ways to take care of ourselves and express ourselves, because that grief just does not go away. When we don't acknowledge or process our feelings, they stay and circulate in our body. And we are so much more powerful in advocating for animals if we have all of our energy, right? It takes a lot of energy to push down feelings, right? To keep them under wraps. But once we can express them in healthy, productive ways, then it frees us up for our own lives and to really support animals in a more powerful way. And, part of that is having compassion for ourselves, also being willing to forgive both ourselves. Sometimes we are hardest on ourselves. And, to realize in some ways that we are all doing the best that we can. And we really, I believe, have a lot more power in making changes if we come from a place of compassion and forgiveness. That does not mean that we're condoning immoral behavior. It does not mean we're saying that cruel behavior is acceptable or okay. It's a choice we make to forgive, to have compassion for ourselves so that we can move forward in a way that we can use our power to create the world that we want to for ourselves and for all sentient beings. And also to be able to live in the moment, because in this moment, the only thing that is real is the moment. And it really helps us to check in, to create what we want to. And, sometimes we can get lost in painful past memories, and it can get in the way because our minds can do this loop where we play over that pain over and over and over again. And it can be counterproductive because, again, it can sap our energy and our love that we can use to bring forward and create what it is that we want to. Inspiration is something that I think is so important. And that's why I think events like this that can be so inspiring keep us going and inspire us to keep creating. And inspiration for me takes things beyond motivation, right? Because like motivation is like we feel motivated to do something in the world. Like inspiration is like the idea gets us from the inside and we feel moved and we feel inspired to take it out into the world, right? And that's what's powerful energetically. That's what brings others on board. That's what excites people about joining the vegan movement, about joining and becoming a leader of love. And, one of the things that I have found is spirituality can be very helpful. And it does not have to be tied to religion in any way. I think of it as a connection to life forces outside of myself. It could be a connection to the ocean, to the animals, to the earth, something that humbles us in some way, right? And lets us know and acknowledges that there's something larger than us, something that will support us and partner with us. There's a practice that I love that I use myself, and the way that it goes is you repeat this to yourself, and the words are, "I am that I am." And so you replace the word "that" with whatever experience you want to have. For example, you might say, "I am love, I am. I am peace, I am. I am tranquility, I am." And in repeating that to yourself and to feel the emotion as you're doing it, you start to create that as a reality in your life and around you. And one of the things that the animals teach us, and I love watching animals play, they have such an amazing spirit of play. And one of the things they wanted to teach us, and it's important that when we're, out there dealing with really serious happenings in the world, that we make time to play, to enjoy being on this planet, right? It doesn't mean that we're ignoring what may be going on. But again, it's one of these things that feeds our body, mind, and spirit and allows us to move forward. The same thing for exercise, right? Getting physical exercise, right? We're mind, body, and spirit. And for us to be at our best and to show up for the planet and the animals with all the energy we have to give, right? We need to take care of our bodies the same way that we care for the animals that we love so much. It's equally as important. And we all know there never needs to be a choice, right? The same way as, when we're talking to people about choosing veganism, right? Sometimes people want to get us to say that animals are more important than people, or are you wearing leather, or, the different kinds of ways that the human mind works, right? To try to navigate out of really opening to their heart, right? There never has to be a choice. There does not have to be a choice between human animals and non-human animals, or between taking care of ourselves or taking care of animals. It's all equally as important and all part of loving all that is. And celebrating is so important, right? So that when we have a win, whether it's a law that protects animals, or it's an animal who has been set free, or a factory farm that has been closed down, whatever it may be, it's important to celebrate, right? For a few reasons, right? It fuels us. It allows us to keep going, right? It also sends a strong message out to the universe. Hey, this is great. This is exactly what we want more of, right? Because the way that the universe works is what we focus on, the universe brings more of, right? So we want to be focusing on, wow, things are really changing. We're really creating a world where all sentient beings are treated with love and respect and compassion. Thank you, universe. This is amazing. And along with celebration, gratitude, right? Because when we're grateful, we're sending a message to the universe that it has already happened, right? And so that's exactly the way we want the universe to be responding to us. Thank you so much for keeping these animals safe and protected and for creating a whole new chapter in our experience on this planet. And, having support, that's another reason why having a conference like this is so important, right? To feel the support of other people who get us and understand us, to have a place where we can share our struggles, to share our disappointments, to share our frustrations. Because again, I know that the bulk of what I've been sharing has been upbeat and keeping on a positive tone. And at the same time, in no way is that meant not to acknowledge the sadness, the grief, the anger, the frustration, the whole host of feelings that we have. And so it's really important to have a support network. Sometimes we get so used to feeling alone that we don't realize there's support around us. I actually, in the last few months, met another animal activist who lives right in my town, and we both lived here for 10 years and we never knew it, right? And I think part of that was on some level that we sort of get used to being in the minority. We get used to people not getting us or not understanding us. And so sometimes we close ourselves off to support that can be right there. So, I co-facilitate a couple of animal activist support groups. I encourage you to reach out to me. My email is jill@healingwithanimals.com. My website is healingwithanimals.com. I have information on my website about animal activism, about grief. Really, there is support for you. So I really would encourage all of you to celebrate yourselves, to celebrate your beautiful hearts, and to really reach out for the support that's here for all of us. And I always say this, and it's always true, the animals always have the last word. And so what they want to share with you is a big pause up, big love, appreciation for all of you, for everything that you do on their behalf and for yourselves, that you are so loved and so supported by them. So thank you.
Thank you, Jill. You are so loved and so supported here. Thank you very much for doing this.
You're welcome.
Bill?
Yeah, I wanted to share a story with you about a snake. Many years ago, one of my main teachers was White Bear Fredericks, the Hopi, and he taught me how to speak to the poisonous snakes. So I'm driving on this dirt road up in the mountains, and all of a sudden I see in the middle of the road a 9-foot rattlesnake. So I pulled off to the side of the road. It was a dirt road. And I got out of my truck and I'm looking at him and he's looking at me. And then down the road, I heard a truck coming. And I looked at the snake and I said, "Hey, there's a truck coming. He's going to run over you." And the snake turned and he looked. And he turned back and he looked at me and he shook his head up and down. And I said, "You better get off the road. He could kill you." And he turned and he looked down the road, shaking his head, and he looked at me and he shook his head up and down. And then he turned and he went off the road and disappeared in the bushes. Just like White Bear taught me.
Beautiful. Yeah. And I want to share with you, some of the animals like snakes, like cockroaches, like mice that humans tend to feel or can feel an aversion towards have some of the greatest lessons for us, right? Teaching us about what humans do, what we do to people and other sentient beings who look different from us, that we don't understand, that we fear, right? So thank you for sharing that beautiful snake story with us.
I have one more. I'm driving from White Bear's house in Old Oribe, and I'm headed back to Phoenix, and I saw a snake on the side of the road, and I pulled off, and he's like signaling me to follow him. So I parked, and I'm following him down this back road, and I went down this hill, and I go, wait, and he just kept going as fast as he could, and I had to almost run. And finally, I got to a point where he stopped and he looked up. And I looked up, and in the rock writing was a 9-foot tall spaceman that looked like it was thousands of years old. And then he turned and he looked at me, and it's almost like he smiled. It was wonderful. Anyway, but I'd share that.
Yeah, keep talking to them.
Thank you, Bill. Tammy?
Thank you.
Sure.
Well, thank you so much, Dill. I'm all about all of that. And I'm all about moving, through and supporting in all of those different emotions. It's interesting, just had that conversation this morning about, a friend of mine, his son is a little melancholic, and that it's okay, like, to normalize melancholy, and we don't always just have to be up. I think that's a really tragic thing that we do to each other. And interesting. We're talking about, communicating. I was just needing a little bit more sweetness out of life. I was not only not setting my own boundaries, but just overcommitting, which is what I learned really young, is that what I do seems to have a direct correlation on my worth, right? And so when we get to a certain place, we can say no in a loving way, and know that I'm not as I have in one of my poems, I'm not a human doing, I'm a human being. So thank you. I would love for you to be part of the Million Vegan Grandmothers and to do, some workshops for us. I think that would be beautiful. And I would love to hear one more time the definition of mindfulness. That's so beautiful, because it really is, we do lose mindfulness if we start to judge any of the words that person's sharing or their actions. So thank you.
You're welcome. I can't say that I have it memorized also, so I'm looking through my notes here too, because that's why I write it down, because okay, here I have it here. Awareness that arises through paying attention intentionally and non-judgmentally in the present moment. It's beautiful, right?
Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you. And I would love to present, and let's connect after.
Sure. Donna?
Great, thank you. Excuse me. My mother, Dr. Jean Robert Baird, wrote a book, How to Think If You Want to Change the World, Spiritual Practices for Social Activism. And it's at magissa.org, www.magissa.org. And I was curious what you were going to say, because the book is to support activists. And I thought, well, I'd be curious what you're going to say. So much that you said is so profound. And I thank you for sharing that. You talked about, what was it? If you change the thing that you see, how is it? If changing the way that you look at something will change the something. And it's so true. As the title of she has a chapter on that, building beliefs to support you, where you can have a belief that things are bad or whatever, and pretty much good, but if you build a belief that things, are in your favor, et cetera, et cetera. And you talked about taking one step, and how that was such a beautiful story about how you take little steps, and then eventually you see this bill passed. And what a beautiful thing. She has it's a chapter on how to honor your daring thought, because so many times we feel pain when we see that those shelves filled with steak. And she said, what we do is we feel that pain. Daring thought comes to us, and we squelch it almost before we even aware of it, because it's too, I could never do that. And she said, notice that daring thought and honor that daring thought. And it's true that when you do something like, what did you do? Wear an elephant's uniform in a protest. When you do something, that pain goes away. It may not do it. It may not be successful, but knowing that you're doing what you can takes that pain away. There are so many things that you touched on today that are, in that book. And I thank you for sharing that and bringing that to us. By the way, I was inspired by the previous Matali. Dr. Salish Rowe read this book on his way to Glasgow, and he said it changed how he did it. And we have quotes here from Ingrid Newkirk and Judy Carmen. And I think I'm going to update it. She inspired me to, to write myself and update it. So anyway, thank you. Sorry.
Welcome. And I wanted to just add that the animals feel our love. So when we extend love to them, to animals all around the world, animals who may be in bad situations, they feel our love energetically. So don't ever underestimate that. I'm not suggesting we don't do whatever activist things we may be called to do, and at the same time, merely sending the energetic love matters.
Very true. You said something else that I think was so important. I'm so sorry, but that, not judging. And she has a thing called the big you, where you don't attach to something and like, this is me and that's you, but to feel yourself part of the universe and realize that there's nothing that you're not part of. And you mentioned that. You just mentioned so many things on this list. So thank you for sharing that. Sorry, I will now.
Very welcome.
Thank you, Donna. Go ahead, Bhavna.
Thank you so much for a beautiful, beautiful presentation and touching on so many levels and so many points. And I think the most beautiful part is the compassion, the love that you radiate. And as you say these words, that's where I think it becomes really contagious for all of us. And as we are responding to it, and just a wholehearted thanks. And I want to say that, because I missed the beginning of the presentation, but in terms of, I feel that, and you might have already said it, that self-love and self-compassion is the beginning of the journey towards love and compassion for any other being on the planet, whether it is our own family, whether it is animals, whether it is society at large, whether, anyone and everyone, the journey is going to begin with self-love and self-compassion. And in the same regard, in the same vein, it also is that people who are not able or who are okay with violence towards animals, say, they are the ones that need our love as well, because somewhere and someplace they are hurting to where they're not able to see, they are avoiding their own pain, because of which they think that it is okay to inflict pain on another. So thank you again for a beautiful
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for sharing that. That was beautiful also. Absolutely self-compassion. And it's interesting because I get some of the strangest looks from people when I mention the concept of having compassion for oneself. And I think it's really true that humans at our best, we live from our heart. And the truth is that no human being who's truly connected to their heart could ever do the things that humans do to animals. And so, again, it's setting a loving limit. It's not okay to act out in certain ways that people do. And at the same time, to know that these people are acting in that way because they are disconnected from their hearts, because that is the only way that they could behave in such a harmful, destructive way. So yes, compassion, self-compassion, it starts from within. And yeah, and so it's really has been an honor to, speak with all of you. And so just keep being you, right? Because I think when we're our most authentic and beautiful selves, that's how we change the world.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jill.